Welcome to True Echo, where every story cuts through the noise and brings powerful truths to light. Today's episode will shake you, because sometimes, standing in silence reveals the loudest injustice. And sometimes, it takes a child, a mother, and one quiet act of courage to change everything. Stay until the end. You won't believe the final twist in today's story. It was just past 7:30 a.m. in the wealthiest corner of the city, the kind of winter morning that wrapped the streets in fog and made everything feel muted, hushed. At the intersection of Breer and Finch stood a coffee shop so pristine, so curated, it felt like walking into a catalog, gold lettering on the glass, artisanal loaves lined up behind spotless counters, and a playlist of jazz so soft it might have been imagined. Inside, a calm order reigned. Patrons sipped cappuccinos made with imported beans. Everyone wore cashmere. No one expected anything to disrupt that silence. But then, the bell over the door gave a soft chime, and Malik stepped in. He was 9. Small for his age, but sturdy in spirit. He wore a faded hoodie over a second-hand thermal shirt, and his jeans were too short at the ankles, just enough to show the mismatched socks his mother had helped him find in a rush the night before. His sneakers were clean, but clearly worn. In his small brown hands, he clutched a burlap wallet with uneven black stitches and a patch sewn on in the shape of a star. No one looked up at first. But the air in the room shifted, imperceptibly, like the drop in barometric pressure before a storm. The barista, a woman named Meredith, had just finished arranging a row of saucers. She glanced up. Her gaze caught on Malik and lingered. Not curious. Not kind. Suspicion slid into her features like a mask she'd worn before. Malik didn't see it right away. He was focused. He had a mission. Just 30 minutes earlier, he had tiptoed out of the apartment he shared with his mother, Alexis Carter, folding the scratchy quilt she used on the couch after her night shifts and carefully scribbling a note on a sticky pad, "Be back soon. Love you, Mama." She'd worked a 12-hour shift. She hadn't even had breakfast. Malik knew that sometimes, a small thing, something warm, something sweet, could mean everything. He wanted to buy her a cappuccino. Just the way she liked it, cinnamon on top. He had counted the coins last night, shoveling driveways on the weekend had finally added up to something. He knew it wouldn't be enough for anything fancy, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough here. He stepped forward and waited his turn, standing a full 2 feet away from the man in front of him, wallet clutched like a sacred object. Then Meredith spoke, her voice clipped like the chill air outside. "Where are your parents?" Malik looked up, blinking. "My mom's at home. I came." "Do you have money?" she cut in. He nodded, holding up the wallet with both hands. "I'd like a small cappuccino, please." A few nearby patrons stirred, mildly curious but not invested. Meredith stepped around the register slightly, narrowing her eyes. "That wallet," she said. "Where'd you get it?" "I made it. In after school." He offered the explanation automatically, his voice steady. She didn't smile. She didn't move toward the register. "I don't think we serve unaccompanied minors here," she said, now louder, her voice rising just enough to catch attention. "Especially not when the cash looks questionable." Malik blinked, confused. "I have $5. And coins." "You need to leave," she snapped, with a forced tone of calm. "We've had trouble before." The word trouble hit like ice water. All around them, the cafe continued its still-life performance, people lifting cups, typing, murmuring, but now the silence was laced with tension. Eyes drifted toward Malik but quickly looked away. No one interrupted. No one smiled. Malik's face flushed, but he stood his ground. "I'm not trouble," he said, quietly. "I just want to buy something. For my mom." "Oh, I'm sure you do," Meredith muttered with a scoff. She bent down slightly, her hand reaching beneath the counter. "Marcus," she said into the walkie-talkie, situation at front. Minor, unaccompanied. Might be loitering. Handle with care. Malik froze. You called security? He asked, stunned. Meredith gave him a cold smile. It's policy. Terror didn't hit him in a flash. It crawled slowly, starting in his fingers as they curled tighter around the wallet. He hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't even touched the counter. He just wanted to bring his mom a cappuccino. The sound of the back door creaking open was barely audible over the low jazz and the hissing espresso machine, but Malik heard it like a warning bell. Heavy footsteps began to approach, slow, deliberate. His eyes stayed locked on the counter, heart thudding so hard it echoed in his ears. He felt like the whole room had turned its back on him, that invisible signs had been hung above every head that said, "This isn't your place." The barista had turned away now, fiddling with a cup like this happened every day, like calling security on a child was just another part of the routine. Her nonchalance hurt more than the suspicion. The casual cruelty. The practiced dismissal. The assumption that no one would object. And so far, no one had. Malik's legs trembled. He gripped the wallet harder, as if it could keep him grounded. Maybe if he just explained better. Maybe if he said the drink was for his mom. Maybe if he showed how carefully he'd counted every coin. But some part of him, some older, tired part that lived inside all kids like him, knew it wouldn't matter. The footsteps drew closer. A tall man in a black polo shirt and earpiece emerged from the back. Security. His name tag read Marcus. He had the look of someone used to handling drunk customers or shoplifters. Not small boys in patched hoodies. He stopped a few feet from Malik and looked at Meredith, confused. This him? She nodded, arms crossed. He won't leave. Said he has money, but, she shrugged, as if that alone was enough of a reason. Malik opened his mouth to speak, but the words got stuck. His throat tightened. It wasn't just embarrassment now. It was the beginning of shame, creeping in like a slow fog. Then. The door chimed again. It was a soft sound, barely cutting through the tension, but its effect was immediate. A voice followed, clear and low, with an authority that didn't need volume to command attention. Step away from my son. Everything stopped. Marcus froze mid-step. Meredith turned slowly, brows furrowing. A few customers looked up from their laptops and phones. The man in the trench coat sat straighter. Malik blinked. He knew that voice. Knew the quiet fire in it. He turned. There she was. His mother, Alexis Carter. She stood in the doorway, framed by the frosted glass, her coat still damp from the morning mist, hair pulled back into a low, neat bun. Her eyes were sharp, razor sharp, and they locked on the barista like a target had been painted. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I said, she repeated, stepping forward with even strides, step away from my son. The silence shifted again, this time, charged with something else. Not discomfort. Not pity. Fear. Because Alexis wasn't just a mother. She was an FBI director. And the badge clipped to her waist said so. Marcus took one small step back. Meredith opened her mouth to speak, but Alexis was already beside Malik, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. I'm his mother, she said. Now tell me who thought it was acceptable to threaten a child over a $5 bill. The barista stiffened. Ma'am, your son came in here alone and was acting. Respectfully, Alexis interrupted. He came in here respectfully. Asked for coffee. Held up his wallet. And your response was to call security. Because he looked. Looked how? Alexis stepped forward. Go on. Say it. Meredith faltered. You saw a little black boy with a handmade wallet and assumed it was a scam. You saw his skin before you saw his character. And you called a guard because that's all it took for you to feel uncomfortable. Marcus shifted awkwardly. I was just called up here. Then walk away, Alexis said calmly, her eyes never leaving Meredith. This conversation doesn't involve you anymore. Malik felt the pressure in his chest loosen. His mother hadn't shouted. She hadn't needed to. She was calm, precise, and unflinching. The way she always was when the world dared to come for what was hers. I want to see your manager, Alexis said. He's not here right now, Meredith tried to interject. Then call him, Alexis said, her voice hardening like steel. Because I'm not going anywhere until this is addressed. Malik looked up at her. She glanced down, her expression softening. You okay, baby? She asked gently. He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. I just wanted to get you coffee. She crouched next to him, cupping his face in her hands. And that means more to me than any drink ever could, she said. You did everything right. Everything. Then she stood again, and the courtroom-like energy returned to the room. We're not done here, she told the barista. And no one in that cafe doubted it. The room still hadn't breathed. Meredith stood behind the counter like a porcelain figurine, still, pale, but cracking. The weight of Alexis's words, delivered with surgical precision, had pulled the rug out from under every false assumption the cafe had quietly held onto. And Malik, standing next to his mother, wasn't just a kid anymore. He was proof. Proof of what happens when silence is broken by truth. The security guard lingered awkwardly by the pastry case, unsure whether to stay or retreat. His job had turned into something bigger than escorting a loitering minor. Now, it looked more like a PR crisis, one that might end up on the evening news. Alexis stepped forward again, pulling her badge from inside her coat. She didn't flash it like a threat. She let it rest openly in her hand like a fact too heavy to ignore. I'm Alexis Carter, Deputy Director of the Bureau's Civil Rights Division. Murmurs rippled through the room like a dropped stone into still water. Someone near the window cursed under their breath. A woman in yoga pants looked down at her phone, suddenly unsure whether to pretend she hadn't heard or to start filming. Meredith's expression changed then. She opened her mouth again, but this time the words tumbled over each other, desperate and defensive. I didn't know who he was. He didn't say anything when he came in. And the wallet looked suspicious. I didn't mean. You didn't mean, Alexis repeated slowly, drawing each word out. But you did act. You acted on instinct. And what exactly did that instinct tell you? That my child, dressed clean, polite, holding his own money, was here to steal from you? That he wasn't worth a moment of your patience? Meredith flinched. That's not fair. No, what's not fair, Alexis countered, stepping closer, is a world where a little black boy can't walk into a coffee shop without being treated like a threat. That's what's not fair. And right now, you're standing behind a register pretending your discomfort matters more than his dignity. The weight of the moment settled on the cafe like snow. Cold. Soft. But undeniable. Malik looked up at his mother, eyes wide with something he couldn't name, part awe, part love, part fear that this day, this moment, had become bigger than he ever intended. But Alexis had seen it all before. She'd sat in rooms full of men who underestimated her. She'd read cases with names like her son's, children turned hashtags, turned statistics, turned forgotten. She was done being polite for the comfort of people who could afford to look away. A staff member, barely older than a college student, peeked out from the back office and whispered something. A few seconds later, Meredith's phone buzzed. She snatched it from the counter, eyes darting to the name. Her fingers trembled as she answered. Sir. Yes. No, I didn't know she was. Yes. She's here now. With her son. Yes, she wants to speak with you. She held the phone out, arm extended like a branch. Alexis took it, her tone cooling to a diplomat's calm. "Mr. Fields, this is Director Alexis Carter. We're going to talk now." Malik sat quietly at the small table his mom had guided him to. The world felt different here. The same espresso machines hummed. The same overhead lights glowed. But something had cracked in the air, and Malik could feel it. He looked down at his wallet again. It was still there. Still his. Still real. His heart no longer pounded like it did minutes ago. Instead, it ticked steadily, quietly. A rhythm of waiting. On the phone, Alexis outlined every detail, the accusation, the call to security, the dismissive tone, the refusal to serve. She quoted sections of the Civil Rights Act the way others quoted recipes. Clear. Accurate. With precision born not from anger, but from training, from practice. "Do you understand," she said to the manager on the line, "that this isn't just bad customer service? This is a systemic behavior pattern, racial profiling of a minor in a public establishment." A pause. "No, I don't want coupons. I want corrective action." She handed the phone back to Meredith, who took it like it burned. Alexis returned to the table. She didn't speak for a moment. Instead, she watched Malik, his small hands slowly unfold from around his wallet. "You still want the cappuccino?" she asked, voice quieter now. He looked at her, eyes uncertain. "Yeah," he said. "I still want it." She smiled then. "A small one. Just for him." "Good." She stood again and walked back to the counter. Meredith stood waiting, fidgeting now. "One cappuccino," Alexis said. "Extra cinnamon." Meredith said nothing. She turned and made the drink, hands shaky, movements unsure. When she placed the cup on the counter, she didn't meet Alexis's eyes. Alexis took it and returned to the table. She set the cup gently in front of Malik, steam curling upward like a ribbon. Malik looked at the drink, then up at her. "This isn't how I thought today would go," he said softly. She reached out and took his hand. "Sometimes," she said, "we don't get to pick the moment. But we do get to choose how we respond to it." And in that moment, the small cafe that had tried to make Malik feel small, suddenly felt too quiet for what he and his mother had just made loud. Malik stared into the steam rising from the cappuccino, watching the cinnamon swirl into abstract shapes. It reminded him of the art his mother used to hang on their walls, powerful, abstract, but grounded in something deeply personal. The silence around their table wasn't the same suffocating quiet from earlier. Now it hummed with something else, clarity. Across the cafe, Meredith retreated to the back, her posture no longer straight with pride, but hunched with the weight of realization. Her co-workers whispered behind the espresso machine, trying to pretend they hadn't heard every word, hadn't watched every second. But they had. Everyone had. Alexis sat across from her son with poise carved from years of learning how to hold fire without burning herself. She didn't sip coffee. She didn't even glance at her phone. Her eyes were on Malik. "You handled that better than most grown men I know," she said quietly. He looked down. "I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. You stood still. You didn't yell, didn't run, didn't shrink. That takes strength. But I felt small." Alexis reached across the table and gently placed a hand over his. "Feeling small doesn't mean you are. It means the world tried to convince you of something that isn't true. And you didn't let it win." Malik stared at their joined hands. His mother's fingers were rough from work, years of files, late nights, impossible cases. He used to think she was invincible. Today, he realized something bigger: she chose to fight. Not because she wasn't afraid. But because some things mattered more than comfort. That truth settled deep inside him. The cafe's door chimed again. A man in a navy pea coat and thin wire glasses walked in, immediately scanning the room. His eyes landed on Alexis. He moved quickly toward her table. "Director Carter?" he asked. She stood. "Yes. I'm Daniel Fields. General manager of this location and 2 others." He extended his hand, and she shook it, firm but brief. "I came as soon as I could. Please, I'd like to speak with you." Malik started to rise, but his mother motioned for him to stay. "It's okay. I'm right here." She stepped a few feet away with the manager. Their voices were hushed, but not inaudible. "We've reviewed security footage," Fields said quickly. "I've already spoken with corporate. This was mishandled at every level." Alexis gave a small, cold smile. "Mishandled is a convenient word. I agree. Which is why we're issuing an apology in writing, retraining staff immediately, and placing the barista on administrative leave pending investigation." "Not good enough," Alexis replied. "You're not just responsible for damage control. You're responsible for culture. This incident wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom." The man looked rattled but nodded. "I understand." "No," Alexis said, her voice lowering, "you don't. But you will. Because I'm not filing a complaint as a federal officer, I'm doing it as a mother. And I promise you, this won't fade with the news cycle." She turned slightly, her voice now just for him. "And I'll be watching." Fields swallowed and nodded again, his eyes flicking to Malik, who sat quietly at the table, his small figure somehow filling the room. They shook hands again. He left without another word. Alexis returned to Malik and sat down. "They're scared," he said. "Good. They should be. Not because of me," she added, "but because they forgot something important." "What?" "That kindness, decency, and respect aren't favors, they're expectations." Malik sipped the cappuccino. It was warm, sweet, familiar. "Do you think they'll really change?" he asked. His mother paused, then leaned back. "I think some people need to be shaken before they see clearly. Maybe today was the start of that." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The cafe had returned to a shallow hum, but no one looked at them now the same way. Some turned away out of guilt. Others nodded faintly, like they wanted to say sorry but didn't know how. Malik wasn't angry at them. But he wasn't afraid of them anymore either. He took another sip and exhaled. "This is for you," he said, pushing the cup across the table. Alexis smiled. "You sure? You earned it," he said with a small grin. "Besides, next time, I'm bringing exact change." She laughed, a real, full laugh that echoed softly in the high ceilings. "You're something else, Malik Carter." He straightened in his chair. "You too." And for the first time that day, the cafe felt warm. Not because the heaters were on. But because they had taken the coldest part of the morning, the part where the world tried to make a child feel worthless, and turned it into something unshakable. A lesson. A legacy. A moment the room would never forget. The walk home was quiet, but it wasn't the kind of quiet that pressed down on your shoulders like shame. It was thoughtful, measured. Each step echoed with something deeper than words. Malik kept glancing up at his mother, her hand gently wrapped around his, firm and steady like always. The streetlights were still blinking their morning cycles, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. He noticed how the fog had begun to lift, and how the sky above their apartment building had shifted from dull gray to a softer, glowing silver. When they reached the front door of their building, Alexis stopped and turned to face him. "You know," she said, "today wasn't supposed to be a lesson. It was supposed to be a gift. From you. And it still was." He looked down at his sneakers, then back up. "But it turned into a problem." "No, sweetheart," she said firmly. "It turned into a message. And you delivered it better than most grown men ever could." They stepped inside, the elevator groaning softly as it pulled them upward. By the time they reached their floor, Alexis had already begun unwrapping her scarf, her mind shifting to work and the formal complaint she knew she'd have to file. But Malik stayed quiet, staring at the framed drawing on their hallway wall, a picture he'd made when he was 5. It was of a house with a tree, a stick figure holding hands with another, both smiling. He remembered coloring that picture. He remembered wanting to show the world that love lived here. Now, he saw it differently. Love still lived here, but now it had armor. Back inside their unit, Alexis set the keys down and pulled off her boots. Malik walked straight to the fridge. The letter was still there, tucked beneath the magnet that held up a takeout menu and a photo of them at the science fair. He stared at the letter. "We're not going back there, are we?" he asked. Alexis glanced over her shoulder. "Would you want to?" He thought about it. About the faces that had turned away. About the silence. About Meredith and the way her fingers curled when his mom spoke. But also, about how no one dared say he was wrong when she stood beside him. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Maybe not yet." She nodded. "That's okay." That night, Alexis typed out her report. Formal language. No emotion. Just facts. She submitted it to the Bureau's Office of Civil Rights Watch and copied it to Breer and Finch's legal team. She didn't expect a miracle. But she expected movement. And she had leverage. Malik didn't go to school the next day. Alexis called the principal, explained the situation. Told him that Malik needed time, not just to rest, but to process. At noon, their neighbor Miss Ellis knocked on the door, holding a small brown bag. "I heard," she said gently. "It's all over the board at work. A friend of mine at the Department of Justice forwarded the clip to me this morning." "What clip?" Alexis asked, frowning. Miss Ellis smiled faintly and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen. It was a video, just under 2 minutes. Shot from across the cafe by someone sitting behind a laptop screen. You could see Malik at the counter. You could hear Meredith's voice. You could hear the moment Alexis walked in, her tone low, commanding. The ending was blurry, but the words were clear. "My name is Alexis Carter. I'm a federal agent with the FBI. And this child you ignored is my son." Malik had wandered up behind her and watched over her shoulder. He froze when he heard his own voice in the video, timid and small. But then, he heard hers. "I just wanted to get you coffee," the voice in the video said. And then came her reply, the line now echoing around the internet. "I know you did. And I'm so proud of you for that." Alexis sighed. "Well. So much for anonymity." Miss Ellis smiled. "Sometimes, a storm needs a name. People need to know where to send the lightning." By evening, the video had over 30,000 views. News outlets reached out. Social media flooded with support. Strangers began sending messages. Some shared their own stories, moments when their kids had been profiled, silenced, or humiliated. Others offered to buy Malik all the cappuccinos he wanted for a year. But Alexis shielded him from most of it. She didn't need him to become a symbol. He was still just a boy. That night, over leftover spaghetti and garlic toast, Malik looked at her and asked, "Did I do the right thing by staying there?" She set down her fork and met his eyes. "You did the hardest thing." "What's that?" "You stayed in a room that tried to erase you, and didn't let it." He smiled, just barely. "Will it ever get easier?" Alexis reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Maybe not," she said. "But you'll get stronger." And that was enough, for now. By Friday morning, Malik's name was quietly circulating in circles far beyond their apartment building. It wasn't just the video anymore. A civil rights blog had picked up the story and published a short article titled, "The Cappuccino That Cost a Child His Dignity," until his mother walked in. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. Activists reposted it. Teachers used it in classrooms. A congresswoman quoted it in a tweet. Alexis didn't know whether to feel proud or furious. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through comments she had promised herself she wouldn't read. Some were powerful. Some were heartbreaking. Some were vile. But every few minutes, she returned to one single comment, posted by someone named Ms. Justice 47. That boy wasn't just standing there with a wallet. He was holding the mirror we've all avoided. And his mother? She didn't raise her voice. She raised the floor. Alexis locked her phone and exhaled. In the living room, Malik sat cross-legged on the rug, building something from old Lego pieces. His focus was intense. Methodical. Like he was trying to put something back together that the week had threatened to shatter. She walked over and sat beside him. "What are you making?" she asked gently. He shrugged. "A courthouse." "Sort of." She tilted her head. "Sort of. I don't know what a real one looks like inside. But I'm building it the way I think it should feel. Safe. Fair." She smiled and said nothing. Just placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. That afternoon, a formal letter arrived, hand-delivered. It came in an envelope bearing the embossed seal of the Breer and Finch corporate office. Alexis opened it carefully, her eyes scanning quickly. Malik watched her reaction like a hawk. "They're closing the store for a full day next week," she said. "All staff training. The barista has been officially let go. The manager offered to meet with us in person, if we choose." Malik said nothing. "There's also a gift card enclosed," she added dryly. $200. He looked confused. "For coffee?" "For silence," she said, folding the letter back up. "But we didn't ask for that." "No," she agreed. "We asked for dignity. For decency. Should we take it?" She met his eyes. "Do you want to go back?" He looked down at his shoes. "I want them to know I'm not afraid. But I don't want to sit in their chairs just to prove something." Alexis nodded slowly, proud of the answer. "Then we won't. Sometimes the best way to show your worth is to build your own table." The next day, the community center director from Malik's after-school program called. "I saw the story," she said over the phone. "And I saw that wallet. Malik made that in our creativity unit last month. It held up better than any of us expected." Alexis chuckled. "He takes good care of things. Especially the things he builds himself." "Well," the woman said, "we're planning a showcase for student work. We'd like to feature Malik's wallet. His story too, if he's willing." Alexis looked at her son, who had been pretending not to listen. He grinned. "I think I'd like that." That Sunday, they went to the park. No interviews. No headlines. Just sunlight and a kite. Malik ran across the grass with the wind tugging at the string, the colors flickering against a pale blue sky. Alexis watched from a bench, her coat open, hands resting on her knees, her eyes never leaving him. For the first time all week, he laughed. And when he came running back, hair tousled, cheeks pink from the breeze, he said something she'd remember forever. "I think I know what I want to be when I grow up." "Oh yeah?" she asked. "What's that?" "Someone who builds places where kids don't have to prove they belong." Her breath caught. "Then you'd be building something the world's never had enough of," she said. He nodded. And in that moment, she saw it, not just who he was, but who he would become. Not because of what happened, but because of what he refused to let it take away. A week passed. The storm had died down, at least in the public eye. The video had faded beneath newer headlines, and the world, as it always does, moved on. But not Malik. Not Alexis. Not the people in that cafe. For them, something had been planted that day, something that wouldn't just disappear. The final echo came in an envelope, no cameras, no crowd, no headlines. It arrived on a quiet Saturday morning. Alexis retrieved the mail while Malik was working on a school project. When she saw the sender's address, Breyer and Finch's corporate office, she almost tossed it aside. But the weight of it made her pause. It was heavier than a standard apology letter. She opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of thick stationery and a small square package wrapped in brown craft paper. She set the package down and read the letter aloud to herself. Dear Director Carter and Malik. Over the past week, our leadership team has had to look long and hard at what we stand for. We failed. There's no excusing that. But we are writing not only to apologize once more, but to acknowledge something deeper. Your son's presence, his quiet strength, and your steadfast response forced our company to confront truths we've long avoided. To say we are making changes isn't enough. We must embody them. We've established a new policy named in Malik's honor, the MALICK standard: mindful, accountable, listening, inclusive, compassionate, and kind. All staff at our 30-plus locations will be trained under this framework. Enclosed is a small token of gratitude. It is not a gift. It is a symbol. May it remind you both that even small actions can leave lasting marks. With deep respect. Daniel Fields, General Manager. Alexis opened the package. Inside was a replica of Malik's wallet. Not the same one, not with the same frayed edges or uneven stitches. But it was beautifully made, burlap, black thread, and in one corner, a small silver plaque engraved with 6 words. You don't have to be big. She smiled and called Malik over. He came to the table, looked at the wallet, and blinked. Is that? They made a copy, Alexis said. To honor the original. He picked it up, ran his fingers along the edges, and flipped it over. On the back was a second engraving. To do something brave. He held it for a long time. Then he looked at his mother. Can I keep this one for school? I want to use it for something. Of course. What about the real one? Alexis thought for a moment. Then she walked to the drawer of her bedroom dresser and pulled it out, the original, with its frayed seams and soft corners. We'll keep this one here, she said. Where we can always see it. Malik smiled, nodding. Later that night, just before bed, Alexis walked into his room to say goodnight. She found him sitting cross-legged on his bed, the new wallet in his lap, the engraved words catching the soft light of his nightstand lamp. Hey, Mama, he asked. Yeah. Do you think I changed something? She sat down beside him. You didn't just change something. You started something. He nodded slowly, eyes heavy but mind still turning. I hope people remember. They will, she said. Not because they saw a video. Not even because of what I said. They'll remember because you stood there. And you didn't disappear. He crawled under his blanket and nestled in. Alexis leaned over and kissed his forehead. Good night, baby. Good night, Mama. As she closed the door, she saw something new resting on his dresser. It was the sign he'd made in art class, the one he'd pinned up next to the apology letter on the fridge. He'd moved it to his room, framed it carefully in a repurposed picture frame. You don't have to be big to do something brave. And in that moment, Alexis knew, he'd never forget. And neither would the world. Sometimes, the bravest acts aren't loud, they're quiet. A boy, a wallet, and the desire to bring his mother a coffee sparked a reckoning in a space built to exclude him. But he didn't shrink. And when his mother stepped forward, the world had to listen. As Malik showed us, you don't have to be big to do something brave. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that standing still is still standing strong. Hit the like button, subscribe to True Echo, and let us know in the comments, what moment made you believe your voice mattered? More stories like this are coming. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a single one.